friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here. Our next trolley stop is now. Welcome back to another all-new episode of the Empowered Publicity Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. To be precise, we have reached episode number 9, the 9th trolley stop here at Empowered Publicity for the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. My name is John Masiulionis, the manager of Empowered Publicity, and each and every month we, of course, are joined by David Newell. You remember him and you love him as the character Mr. McFeely on the long-running children's television program Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. David, happy holidays to you. I think it's safe to say, because we're in the month of November, we got that holiday vibe here on the Bookcast. The trolley's got some nice Thanksgiving decorations and even some lights I can see. And it's a very special month because we're not only celebrating episode number 9 of the Bookcast, it's not only the start of the holiday season, but someone very special is celebrating their birthday. And we'll give a little bit of a little clue to all of a hint to all of our listeners and viewers that I celebrated my 40th birthday in August. So I believe that by default that would make you celebrating your 40th birthday in just a few
for the second time. But I'm celebrating.
Yes. Well, we're going to be having so much fun because this is a birthday celebration for David Newell as well here on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. Of course, we want to express our gratitude and our appreciation before we begin this 3-book bookcast here for episode number 9 to give special recognition to our friends and neighbors at Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh. They are the Pittsburgh chapter of the largest national non-for-profit children's literacy organization in the United States. Reading is Fundamental, of course, provides children's books, literacy developmental tools, and resources for children that come from low-income families all across the country. And again, as many of you know, David still resides in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That is where Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood was filmed at WQED. So we are proud to be able to make a donation through Empowered Publicity each and every month to the wonderful team at Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh. And did you know that last year alone that they provided over 23,000 children's books to over 80,000 children's books, I say, to over 23,000 children in need. David, that's a lot of children's books. Just the fact that there is this wonderful organization and the fact that Pittsburgh is still, 20 plus years after the passing of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Pittsburgh really cares about children and nurturing their minds and their hearts and their souls. So it's just great as we've been working with Reading is Fundamental for the past 9 months to be able to create awareness for the wonderful work that they're doing for children from low-income families.
That's right. And for those viewers who ever find themselves in Pittsburgh at some point, they can see the actual Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood set at the Heinz History Museum, downtown Pittsburgh. And there's a statue. And just recently, last week, in Fred Rogers' alma mater, Rollins College, there was another statue in dedication to Fred and celebration of children on the campus of Rollins College. So the neighborhood continues, the legacy continues.
That is so wonderful. That is so wonderful to see and to feel and to hear. So we encourage all of you, if you feel guided to do so, our listeners and viewers, our fellow friends and neighbors, and of course as well our fellow shining stars, if you feel guided to make a donation to Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh, no donation is too large, no donation is too small. You can head on over to their official website, rifpittsburgh.org/donate. We've included the link below in the description below to make things easier for you in the process. And, especially around the holiday season, there's a lot of families that are struggling. There's a lot of children that are struggling, and something such as providing a few dollars so that they can purchase a wonderful new children's book. We've been proud to be able to, donate nearly $1,000 this year to Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh here through Empowered Publicity. So, just to be able to give what you can, even, give them a little like on social media as well too, because there are many ways to be able to support the wonderful work that Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh is doing outside of the cash donation variety. And of course, if this 3-book bookcast, we have not even talked about the books yet, that is on deck. if these messages that we're already sharing, David's birthday, the holiday season, this 3-book bookcast, if this is lifting your spirits today when you're watching episode number 9 of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast, if you are really doing your part to be able to connect more with the love and joy of reading and encouraging your little one to do the very same, if you're a strong proponent of local libraries, children's bookstores, and just the whole world of children's literature, we encourage you to subscribe to Empowered Publicity's official YouTube channel and to share this very special trolley stop that is episode number 9 of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast. And David, when we haven't had a 3-book bookcast in some time, so the trolley's going to be racking up some miles. So the trolley's already gone from San Diego to Pittsburgh, just like that. So we're going from San Diego to Pittsburgh to Brooklyn, New York, which is there's some wonderful children's authors in Brooklyn, New York. It's a very strong, the New York City area has many children's authors, children's illustrators. It's where a lot of the publishing houses are based out of. We are now going to be diving into the pages of one of the newest members of Empowered Publicity, one of our newest Empowered Publicity family members, Laquita Bolden's I Matter, which is the first installment in the My Little Scientist series. Now, David, we've covered a lot of ground on the bookcast over the course of these past 8+ months. I believe this is the first science book that we're going to be covering on the bookcast. And this has got a little bit of not just a science theme, a strong science theme, but it also has personal empowerment, because when you think of the term I matter, you think of matter, solids, liquids, gases, plasma, matter, science.
Right.
But then you also think of your place in the world and how we all matter, how we're important, how we're worthy. So I really love the fact how Laquita is blending her love of science, her love of education, and really giving a beautiful message of personal empowerment for children all across the country and around the world.
That's right. And the little scientist in the story, her name is Aubrey.
Yes.
And I was going to read something that Laquita wrote in her introduction. And I think it's very important. And she says, if we want students of color to break into other fields of learning, they have to see themselves outside of the stereotypes society pushes on them. And she's doing her part, Laquita, by making her character, Aubrey, so interested in science. And I can go on and give you a little overview of the book, if you like.
Absolutely.
Should I begin?
Let us dive into the pages of I Matter.
That's right, I Matter. And you'll have to pardon me because I have notes. I'm going to be referring to them on and off. But the story begins with Aubrey being awakened by noise downstairs of her brothers. They're quite active brothers, and she goes downstairs. She says, "I'm trying to sleep. Stop yelling," and just making all this noise to her brothers. And her mother comes in and says, "Aubrey, stop yelling, please." And Audrey couldn't believe why her mother was telling her to stop screaming when the boys were making all the noise. Oh, and she feels hurt, Aubrey, and she goes up to her room, and not fair. My brothers don't get in any trouble, and I do. And she's in tears, and she goes to her iPad and starts using it. You know, it's interesting too that the children's books coming now are using 10 years ago, maybe iPads weren't mentioned in children's books. You know, it's interesting how they're being integrated into stories. At any rate, she starts using her iPad and she dozes off. And then she wakes up and goes downstairs for breakfast, and her mom is doing dishes, and her mom, it doesn't seem to acknowledge her coming in, and it doesn't even turn around, and Aubrey's confused, and are you mad at me? And her brothers are playing, and they don't seem to notice her either. So she's, what's going on? And her dad walks into the kitchen, and he seemingly ignores her. Well, where's Aubrey? In fact, he says, "Where's Aubrey?" to their mom, and she must be in her room. And they continue to talk and without sort of acknowledging her. And she's scared. Well, what's going on? Is this a bad dream? Are they playing a trick on me? And she runs upstairs to FaceTime with her friends on the iPad, and her friends don't see her. And we can't see her or hear you, Aubrey. We'll call you later. We'll call you later. And she starts thinking to herself, am I invisible? Well, now here's where some science comes in. There's a page where science is talked about, and I'll skip over that because the general story will come along. But I also can see that page where a science teacher could use that page in reading this book to her class. I think
and it's page 15, by the way, for those who are keeping score at home, as they say. That is page 15 of I Matter, that talks all about science and solids and liquids and gases and matter existing and all of that, and then some.
Yes, and that ties together the matter and all of that. Well, Aubrey gets into her lab coat and she gets her iPads and she goes into her private lab in back of the closet. She has this all set up. She really loves science, and it's wonderful to see what Laquita did with making her so interested in science. Well, she does some research, and I'm not going to go in the process now. That's the big page of the atoms but it helps if basically it's the heating and cooling of atoms on that page. That's important to the story. And Audrey thinks that maybe because she was so mad at her family and her treatment, she in a way became overheated, and now she needs to find a way to get back to her solid phase. Another scientific reference. And then her family will be able to see her. Well, now how do I cool down, she says. And she goes to the air conditioner and turns it on. Maybe this is not working. Maybe I'll be invisible forever. Well, and here's where Audrey remembers the greatest lessons her parent taught her. And this is going to what you referred to earlier, that it's combining the love of Audrey and family. It's a wonderful family. And she forces negative thoughts out of her mind. And here's what they taught her. And I'm quoting from the book. Your thoughts are important as your words. Think positive every day. Think positive, she imagines. And she'll be with her family again. That's what Aubrey is thinking to herself. If I think positive, I'll be with my family again. I won't be invisible. Then she hears, Aubrey, wake up. And her brothers are jumping on her bed, as probably as usual. She feels a tap on her arm, and her eyes open. Oh, can you see me? Can you hear me? Her brothers stare. Of course we can see you. And so she's so relieved they can see her. So she's excited and runs downstairs, and her mother can see her. And she told her mom all about the dream she had. As it turned out, it was a dream. She fell asleep while on her iPad. And her mother assures her she's always on display. She's the big sister and the role model for her brothers, and she's important in the family. She sets the tone for the family.
Yes.
She matters, I matter. That you can see where the matters come in. And we all love you, Aubrey, says Mom. In the last few sentences, Audrey realizes she is appreciated. And also a bit of science. Audrey realizes she was trapped in an atmosphere of gas, and that certainly wasn't fun. And I like the ending sentences too. It was a place of aloneness and unhappiness where she was trapped. She preferred the solid version of her world. And that's it ends with another reference to science, the solid world and not in the gas world. And they're sprinkled all through science, but I like the exchange between her mother and Aubrey, that she's the role model for the family. And we all love you, Aubrey. And that, I think, is one of the most important sentences in the whole book. So, yes. And on the last page of the book, there's a science experiment that the people can do. And it involves Alka-Seltzer tablets, water, and a balloon but I'm not going to demonstrate it right now.
I think
it's a wonderful way to end the book, I think.
Yeah, it's creating more of a love and more of a connection of science.
Right.
It's interesting because being a child of the 80s, one of the commercials I would always remember that would come on television would be for Alka-Seltzer. I really don't watch television that much, but I remember the old Alka-Seltzer commercials from the 1980s. What I also wanted to mention too, David, and thank you for sharing everything from I Matter thus far. Sometimes for little ones, science can be boring.
Yes.
Right? It's a matter of how can we make science fun. I remember this is a freshman year of high school. My earth science teacher, Mrs. Hours, I still remember her name, David. This is going back to 1995. This is like 26 years ago. And I remember it was like so boring. We're talking about, the different kinds of rocks, the igneous, the sedimentary, the metamorphosis, and even like growing up, during like grammar school, a lot of that was kind of boring, but it's important to look at science in the perspective that it can be filled with a lot of learning, but that it can be fun as well too.
That's right. And I think Laquita makes it fun. I think she and as you said earlier, how she wove together the science along with the love of the family. It's she's certainly from a loving family. Aubrey is from a loving family, and it's a wonderful book, and I think it could be read. Now, I would think it's for an older child, though. It's not a preschool book.
Yeah, I'm thinking like, first, second, third grade kind of thing, is because, even there's a lot of words on some of the pages as well too. And, we're not saying that as a detriment to the book. It's just a matter of like, if you put that in front of a preschooler, it might be better to have their mom or their dad read the story to them and kind of, talk to them about, the connection between science and, how much you matter in the world, little one. I would go ahead.
That page is, I was going to say that I learned something from that one page about matter and how Aubrey was experimenting, and I learned something. So there's something for adults in the book too, because I wasn't the best in science. In chemistry, I would things would look like Alka-Seltzer all the time. They'd be fuzzing over. Oh, by the way, I just happened to think that you mentioned the Alka-Seltzer commercial, and the little Alka-Seltzer man, his name was Speedy Alka-Seltzer. And at any rate, I just thought I'd throw that in as a little sideline. But I love Laquita's book, Laquita Bolden. And do you know who did the illustrations? Do you have that in front of you? The illustrations for the book?
I'm not 100% sure. I believe that there's different ways where you can have children's authors to illustrate their books in the process. Sometimes it's a teamwork approach. Sometimes it's, being able to work with someone on the other side of the pond. I did want to mention one of the illustrations, David, which was just so, you can tell how this book has a lot of light and life and vibrancy. When Aubrey, there's page 18, she's got the light bulb over her head. She's got this big smile on her face, and you can tell on page 19 it says, your thoughts, and this is what her parents told her. Your thoughts are as important as your words. Think positive every day, they would always say. And there's times throughout the day, whether you're a little one or you're a big kid, like us, right? And we wake up in the morning and it's like, oh boy, we start to get that, we might feel it's not going to be a good day, or it's going to be a challenging week or whatnot. And we have to take that time to just remind ourselves that our thoughts and our words have our connection. And when we think positively, we're going to put more positive words out there. We're going to be creating even greater nurturing and positive experiences. So I just really love the overall blend of colors in the book. There's like a light green, like an aqua green, like a teal, there's blue, there's yellow. So it's just a very vibrant book. I would also say that if there's, a little one that's, because in November, we're also, believe it or not, David, we're celebrating National Family Literacy Month. Oh, believe it or not. Okay. And I feel that, sometimes little ones, it's kind of just like science. They might think it's boring. Some kids might think early on that reading is boring, or that reading isn't fun. And if you bring a book like Laquita Bolden's I Matter and you see the different sorts of colors, sometimes all it takes is a connection with the colors, and it's like, then you kind of get hooked onto the reading part, and then everything else falls into place. The one last thing that I wanted to mention as well too is that I wouldn't be surprised if there's other books to come in the My Little Scientist series.
I was going to say that just before you said that. I said, that is a wonderful overall title.
Yep.
My Little Scientist. And I Matter could be one, and who knows what Laquita may think up next, but I think she should think about the second edition or the second book. But anyhow, and you spoke about Family Literacy Month. November, is that what you?
This would be a perfect month. Yes,
it's a perfect book for Family Literacy Month too. I Matter.
Well, I think
so. That's the first book, right? Did you have one more thing to say?
Yes, actually,
I interrupted you.
Two things is that when. Because I've been really thinking about this the past couple of days, David, with it being National Family Literacy Month. And, if you remember during the early times of COVID and the pandemic where, we were all secluded in our residences for the most part, kids really couldn't go anywhere. They weren't able to spend time with their friends. And one of the things that children were doing more is reading with their families. And it's very easy, yes, we're all excited. Things are opening back up, things are, I really don't use the term they're getting back to normal. We're creating a newer, more heartfelt normal in many respects. But it's still important to take the time, of course, if you're a parent of a little one, if you're guided to do so, it's very easy to go to the football game or go to the amusement park or go to the concert. Or here in San Diego, you can go to Legoland or you can go to, Disneyland. All those things are great, but there's no exchange for taking the time to read with your little one and to really make it like, a family night, like a family reading night, even if it's just once a week. Try it on for size and see how your family feels.
And you can encourage the child to make their own book, just fold over some sheets of paper. And if they can't write yet, they can color, make a book by just coloring a story. So all of that can be inspired by books. And I've always said that the connection between the parent or the reader and the child, there's a bond there.
There is.
And that's what I think children really remember. Is they may forget the stories that were read, not all of them, but may forget some, but they remember that strong bond between the parent and the child, or the grandparent or the uncle, whatever. It's that bond that's important, I think.
And just like how you were talking about, with Uncle Wiggily and Mike the Tough Little Tugboat, which were two of your treasured reads growing up. And for me, it was the Berenstain Bears series. Right. It was just a matter of, when you have that special moment or two, those are the things that you still remember 30, 40, 50 years later, when your childhood is long since in the rearview mirror. And it's just those connections really last for the rest of your life.
Oh, I remember Uncle Wiggily that you weren't too familiar with, but he back when I was growing up, that was a big series, Uncle Wiggily, and every chapter would end with, now if the so-and-so doesn't do this or this or this, I'll tell you the story of this, and that would be the next chapter. And you could stop there. It was almost like a serial in a book form, the next night you'd pick up with the next chapter. And I remember my parents reading them to me. And then of course, when I learned to read, I read them. I still have them, the Uncle Wiggily books. At any rate, if the viewers have never heard of Uncle Wiggily, Google it. I'm sure somewhere there's Uncle Wiggily book they can check into.
It is still out there. So we encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and again, of course, our fellow Shining Stars, if you feel guided to purchase your copy of I Matter, the first book in the My Little Scientist series, you can head on over to Amazon.com if that's your preferred online vehicle of choice. One of the many ways that you can support children's authors, including Laquita, is leaving 5-star reviews for their books. Now, again, if you feel guided to do so, that's one of the many great ways that you can support Laquita, to let her know that she's doing wonderful work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love science as well. We're also just, we're going to be including the official websites for all three authors whose books that we're featuring on this month's Bookcast as well too. And one perfect transition before the trolley hops to its next destination is that it's so important to be able to share books from authors that come from different races, ethnicities, backgrounds. And I really love the fact how Laquita, as well as our next author who we're talking about, they are really doing their part, especially to instill the love and joy of reading in African-American children as well, which is a perfect segue because the trolley, we've gone from San Diego to Pittsburgh to Brooklyn. Now we're going to be going a little bit south, not deep south, but we're going to be going to the beautiful state of Virginia near our nation's capital. And we are going to be sharing Captain Curriculum Saves Circle Time from one of our favorite neighbors, Curtis Andrews. And we also want to give a little shout out to Curtis and to his fiance. They are educators, David. And I think that, just there's this similar connection that Laquita and Curtis have because they're both educators. They're both African-American children's authors, and they really have a passion for instilling education and reading in the hearts and minds and souls of young ones. And just Captain Curriculum, I mean, when you think of superheroes, you think of Batman and Superman and Aquaman, and for the ladies, you got Wonder Woman as well too. But have you heard of a superhero called Captain Curriculum until now?
Curtis brought Captain Curriculum to us, and he has an intro page. Well, the official title of the book is Captain Curriculum Saves Circle Time, right?
Correct.
And there's an intro page for teachers and families that acknowledges the challenge it can be to transition children from one activity to the next. Now, this would be in a daycare situation.
Correct.
He explains that expectations can help children. The object is to give children a sense of how much time they have before moving to the next activity, which is very and so true. There could be a song or some instructions that the teacher would indicate they're moving to another transition. And if possible, give them a little extended time before moving on. Work with a little flexibility. Mm-hmm. Well, the story begins with Mrs. Weeble trying to get the children's attention and gather for circle time. That alone is a challenge. Well, of course, they react with groans and, oh, we're not finished playing and I hate school. And Mrs. Weeble says, we have to stick to the schedule. Not fair, they say. Well, you can hear the average, you can hear this at some point. Maybe you don't after you read this book, though. Look at the schedule. 8:30 is circle time, so hurry, children, Mrs. Weeble is saying. They quickly clean up, but it was a rough transition, and she tries to read a book to them, and Janie and Max are too distracted. They keep nudging each other, and I can just see it. And as Mrs. Weeble's reading, she forgets to show the pictures, and the class, of course, gets a little distracted. They don't see the pictures, and they start to laugh and sing and tickle each other. And Mrs. Weeble becomes so frustrated, she screams. And there's a huge noise in the room, and her face turns red. Well, and she notices the children have stopped moving. What's going on? She asks herself. And then she hears footsteps. And there's a noise stops. She notices a shadow at the door, and the door swings open, and lo and behold, Mrs. Weeble sees a man in a gray and black costume, as you mentioned earlier, sort of a superhero look. And his boots are black, and his cape is black. And in the middle of the chest, there's a big letter C. Mm-hmm. Hello, he says, my name is Captain Curriculum, and he's arrived to save the day. Mrs. Weeble sees that he can freeze time. This is you can buy into this. He freezes time. The children are safe, and he announces that he can help her with her classroom. Mm-hmm. I will give you a plan, and a plan is what's needed for Mrs. Weeble. And she says she has a hard time managing the classroom. Well, How did the problem start? Asks Captain Curriculum. She explained they should let the children do what they wanted to do, and they were having so much fun, and it was getting late for circle time. Well, as she was saying all this, Captain Curriculum realizes that there was no transition between the cleaning up time and circle time. There was no time for it. And Captain says, well, there's always time for a transition. And Mrs. Weeble said, well, I've never used transitions. And just then, Mrs. Weeble is startled, and lo and behold, behind her was a woman in a red and black costume. And here enters Tracy Transitions. And the captain will be back soon, but in the meantime, Tracy is going to give her some simple transitions to use when she needs it to get the children to circle time. And she suggests a simple all eyes on me song. This is what Tracy suggests to Mrs. Weeble. Well, let's try it. Now you have a plan. The captain reappeared when he heard the word plan. Oh, a time to unfreeze the children. Now, I'm not quite sure how it was frozen, but I think you have to buy into that. You know, when Mrs. Weeble screamed, the children became very silent, and then the captain and Tracy entered. Anyhow, the captain snapped his finger, and the children began to talk. And Mrs. Weeble, who's very confident now, says, 1, 2, 3, all eyes on me. The children stop and give their attention to Mrs. Weeble. 1, 2, 3, all eyes on me. And the captain whispers to Tracy, but now let's see, we'll come back tomorrow and see how they're doing. Well, they came back the next day. This is the captain and Tracy, and coming back to see how Mrs. Weeble's doing with her new plan. And they're in the classroom without being seen. And Mrs. Weeble says her new words, which is 1, 2, 3, all eyes on me. And the children respond by cleaning up, and they find their place in circle time, all very organized and without a lot of screaming and complaining and yelling. Very, very orderly. And the captain says to Tracy, it's amazing what you can do when there's a plan. And in the last sentence of the story sums everything up. If everyone knows the plan and follows it, then that classroom will be an amazing place to be. And the author, Curtis Andrews, is an early educator, as you mentioned, early childhood educator, as you mentioned. And actually, I think Curtis may be Captain Curriculum himself.
And
I bet.
And Tracy Transitions is inspired by his fiancée. So one of the things that I really love about Captain Curriculum Saves Circle Time is they take their personal and professional experience, like their personal relationship, their professional experience, their service for children, and they bring it in this beautiful, heartfelt children's books, and remind little ones that, you know, having a plan can be fun, and also learning to be able to manage time, because time is this very interesting concept, David. I remember you may have even been on set with Mr. Rogers in this episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, where Fred had the little alarm clock, and for 60 seconds no one talked. If I'm not mistaken, weren't you on set with him when? Yes.
What it was he may have used an alarm clock at one time, but one time he used an egg timer.
An egg timer.
And the camera watched the sand, and then at the end of that, he said to the children via the camera, "That's how long a minute is." And because children, you can say a minute to children, they don't have a concept, a young child. But by watching and time, it gave them a relationship, and I think the book, Captain Curriculum, is for teachers, but you could read it at home to children. It's for all, but it's for a little older child. It's not a preschool book, I don't think. Maybe it's for maybe it is preschool, but it's older preschool and
Yeah,
early elementary.
I would, kindergarten, maybe even up to first grade kind of thing, I think would be okay.
Yes.
And I think this is also a perfect book. Let's say if you have a rambunctious classroom, if you're a teacher and you're wondering, man, how are these kids going to listen? And, we got to transition from one thing to the next. Okay, kids, we've got a great children's book that we're going to be reading today. And it's teaching them all of these sorts of things because it's not necessarily the easiest when you're the cowboy of the class and you have to
round everybody up,
the kids kind of thing and whatnot. Because as Curtis had shared, there's times where little ones will come in at different points in time in the morning, and you just really have to do your part to get everyone on the same page. And that's right. And that's not the easiest thing to do, especially for young little ones.
But what Curtis is giving in the story to teachers is, it's very simple to get that one little song, the 1, 2, 3, all eyes on me, or whatever the teacher can come up with, that the students recognize and know it's time for that transition, and know they have time within that transition to put away their toys, et cetera, and gather for circle time. Oh, and I remember, we did something like this when our children were growing up. My wife and I, we have 3 children and they're all adults now, but I remember getting them ready for bed. That's not easy. But we came up with some sort of a plan. And what it was, when bedtime came, they were playing in their room with all the toys, and we would say, okay, it's time. When we come back in the room, we're going to give you such and such a minute. How many minutes we gave, I can't remember. But we're going to go and count. And when we come back in, the toys will be put away. You'll have your books picked out and ready for reading time before bed. And it worked. It took a while to get going. But in a way, it's the same thing that Curtis is saying, is to have a plan. And children, I think they like that plan too. And children like to know. They like that there is a plan for them, and they can follow that, and things will be more orderly.
I'm glad that you're sharing that, because sometimes you can think that a plan is boring or it's going to take the fun out of things, and it's important to be able to have some organization and some structure.
That's right.
And especially those are two of really the building blocks of nurturing the mind of a child as they're starting off, especially with education. You're going into preschool, you're going into kindergarten, there's these changes that happen, and just to be able to let the little ones know that having a structure that's in place. I know one thing that actually comes to mind is that I went to a Catholic school on mine, I think. So we had our different, first period, second period, et cetera. But when it came time for the class to be done, there was the bell that rang. And then, we would all change rooms. We'd go to, this way or this way and whatnot. And that was the transition. When we heard the bell, that was the transition to go on from, science to music, or from, from art to religion. Right. So we kind of went back and forth. And I will say this, the song when the little ones are on the neighborhood, the Anna, Prince and Daniel, Anna, Prince and Daniel. When I was reading Captain Curriculum Save Circle Time, I was kind of wondering, how would they do with transitions, kind of thing, Anna, Prince and Daniel. But the fact that educators take the time to care so much about children, and then take the time to actually write children's books as well too. I feel that some of the children's books that have the most value are the ones written by educators, because they have that more experience with the little ones, and they're kind of sharing those sort of educational elements. So I love how we've seen the flow and the tie-in between I Matter and between Captain Curriculum Save Circle Time thus far, David.
Yeah. Now at the end of the book too, Curtis has some pages for teachers or caregivers to list Circle Time's activity.
Exactly.
So there's some pages to do that. So I think teachers would love this book. or maybe teachers who are just beginning in childcare.
Yes.
It would be also good in a college curriculum who are teaching preschool education. It's
Very true.
It would be a lesson, very strong lesson in a very basic story.
And a
So,
little
Curtis,
and a little sneak peek too, David, is that we have not seen the last of Captain Curriculum, because Captain Curriculum is going to be back in 2022 and beyond. So a little sneak peek for all of our listeners and viewers and our friends and neighbors that are.
And I guess Tracy Transitions will be.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if
there?
we've seen the last of Tracy Transitions as well too, because the two of them are a team. David, we're ready to hop into our third book. And the beautiful thing, I think this is the first time that the trolley's been able to more or less take a nap during an episode of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, because we're staying in the state of Virginia. We're actually going to Northern Virginia, and we're going to be sharing the latest installment. One of the most beautiful children's book series that's out there is courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Beaming Books, which, by the way, great name for a publisher. Who wouldn't want to have their book published? Beaming, the sun beaming in the sky, the smile beaming on my face. But the latest installment in the Woodland Friends series is Squirrel's Sweater. Now, we've had the opportunities to interview not only Curtis Andrews on the Empowered Publicity Children's Book Spotlight series, but also Laura Reynolds, who is the author. She's the creator of the Woodland's Friends series and the author of Squirrel Sweater. So we're also going to include the links below if you would like to be able to check out my one-on-one interviews with Curtis Andrews and Laura Renauld on the Empowered Publicity Children's Book Spotlight. Learn even more about their backstory and how these beautiful books came to be. But David, there's a little nip in the air, depending upon where you live. Here in San Diego, it's still like 70 some degrees, but I saw the weather back where I used to live in Buffalo, and it's like, I heard the term black ice on the ground, and I'm like,
oh dear.
I remember those days. So depending upon where you live, there can be a nip in the air. We're still in that sweet spot right between fall and winter, and all of the wonderful characters at the Woodland's Friends series are back. They're preparing for, get this, not just the winter, but as Laura likes to refer to it as, winter warm-up is approaching, and they're all bundled up for the snowy season ahead. And for those who are unfamiliar of the Woodland's Friends series, there are two previous books in the Woodland's Friends series. There is Porcupine's Pie, and then there is Bear's Bicycle. So this is the third installment in the Woodland's Friends series. So you're going to be able to learn more about all of these other characters leading into reading Squirrel Sweater if you'd like to learn more about the Woodland's Friends series. Really, David, as the back of the book shares, it is a charming tale about learning to navigate change and how friends can help us along the way. It's always important to have friends and neighbors on our path. So take us inside the pages of Laura Reynolds' Squirrel's Sweater.
Well, Squirrel Sweater, I think, is more for a preschool child or a younger child than the other two books. Don't you agree?
Agreed.
But it's a charming story, not a long story. And it begins with Squirrel searching her nest for one thing that was missing to get ready for winter, and that was her sweater. But she found it, but it had shrunk. She couldn't get it on. She pulled and she yanked, but it barely covered her belly. But then she hurried into the woods to find her friend Doe, a deer. And Doe helped her by adding branches and ribbon to the hem. And the sweater smelled like fresh pine. And Squirrel and Doe planned to meet that evening at the winter warm-up, as you mentioned earlier. But as Squirrel walked back home, the evergreens became loose and dropped off, and Squirrel's belly was chilly as ever. Well, on her way, she saw Bear, and who was preparing for his long winter's nap by getting stuffing into his blanket. And Bear said, let's see if some of the stuffing would help your sweater. Well, thanks, Bear. The stuffing is tickling me, but it will help me keep warm. And see you tonight at the winter warm-up. Well, next, Squirrel was moving along, and as you said earlier, it was snowy and there was some ice. And just then, Squirrel slipped on some ice right into the porcupine's den. And it's not ice, Squirrel, they're beads. Beads. I've been spilling them all morning, said the porcupine. And well, what's the matter with your sweater? Well, porcupine tried to help fix it with some quills, but tugging and pulling the quills, it ripped the sweater. Well, what to do? Squirrel became sad because Granny Gray, her Squirrel's grandma, I guess, was Granny Gray, I guess Gray Squirrel, knitted the sweater for her, and she thought it would always fit, and she had such attachments to the sweater because Granny knitted it for her. Porcupine said, Granny Gray is always in your heart. You can't grow out of that. No. And you're right, Porcupine, and I'll see you tonight. Well, Squirrel got back to her nest, and she gave the sweater a final tug, trying to get it on. And then she decided she was going to cut the sweater into 2 hearts. And she used doe's ribbon, and she used bear stuffing, and she used porcupine's beads. And out of that, she made a pillow, a heart pillow.
A memory pillow, yeah.
Yes, a memory pillow, which reminded her of Granny Gray. And she took it to the winter warm-up, and she showed it to her friends, and it says, this pillow reminds me of each of you. You warm my heart just like the winter warm-up. And it's a very sweet book, and a very interesting read, and the illustrations are wonderful. Oh, and on the last page there are directions for making a no-sew, so you don't have to worry about needles, a no-sew memory pillow. And so it's a short book, but the illustrations are by Jenny Poe. Is that the correct name?
Jenny Poe, yes.
And they're the illustrations, and of course Laura wrote the book. So thank you, Laura. It's a sweet book. I'm going to try this one. I have a grandson who's about the right age for this book, and he lives here in Pittsburgh. And I'm going to see if how he reacts to it.
I love that.
So I test some of these books out on grandchildren, but unfortunately some of them are in California. So the ones that come visiting are tested. And we have one here in Pittsburgh. And so I test the age appropriate ones out on him, the younger. I don't think he's too young to understand I Matter at this point. In a few years, he'll be ready for that one. And Captain Curricula will be ready for that in a few years. But Squirrel Sweater, he's going to get a preview of it.
and I'm sure he's going to love that. I really love this book for several reasons, and thank you for sharing your thoughts about Squirrel Sweater, David. Is that this is sometimes especially when you're introducing, and the theme of this month's Bookcast is National Family Literacy Month, and when you're taking the time to really introduce reading to your little ones and have it be a very simple message. We're not reinventing the wheel in many respects, right? But to be able to have a book about friends, and you've got a bear and a doe and a squirrel, porcupine, like that's just adorable on so many levels. And the fact that they truly care about one another. It's also a wonderful way to be able to teach little ones about your emotions and feelings, because, as we've shared on past episodes of the Bookcast, we've talked about several books that have focused on death and grief and loss, which is a very sensitive subject for little ones, especially around the holiday season. So, I can just, imagine a little one reading Squirrel Sweater, and they start to think of the connection that Squirrel had with Granny Gray. And this is a matter of there are specific things I know when my grandmother passed away, I have connections with her. My grandmother, believe it or not, was a huge fan of Jeopardy. So now, like when, obviously, Alex Trebek is no longer with us in the physical room, but anytime that like Jeopardy came on, I had the connection with my grandmother. My grandmother's favorite color, David, believe it or not, is green. So anytime like I look outside my office here and I see this beautiful tree, what I call the peace tree, right outside my residence, and there's a beautiful green grass. So it's like you can create, even if your loved one is no longer with you, grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, sister, brother, wife, husband, there's still those things that you can connect, whether it be a physical thing or most importantly the memories, because the memories will never die. And it's interesting too, talking about the memories, because I know that I had introduced you to in our Empowered Publicity Green Room. Laura is also one of the authors that has put out a wonderful book on Mr. Rogers, of course, the longtime host of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, and courtesy of Simon Kids, the kids division of Simon & Schuster, they put out Fred's Big Feelings nearly 2 years ago. And, so she has a very fond connection of Mr. Rogers and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And I just love the little chuckle that you had on your face where it's like, hey, there's McFeely, when we were kind of looking at some of the illustrations from Fred's Big Feelings. So Laura has written 4 amazing children's books. You've got the 3 in the Woodlands Friends series, which again are Porcupine's Pie, Bear's Bicycle, and now Squirrel Sweater. And believe it or not, David, we haven't seen the last of the Woodlands Friends series because Doe is going to be getting her own book at some point. I wouldn't be surprised if that actually happens. So we encourage you to head on over to Laura's official website, laurarenauld.com. If Amazon is your preferred vehicle of choice, you can also purchase your copy of Squirrel Sweater there. Leave a 5-star review if you feel guided to do so as well, along with Fred's Big Feelings. If you're a Mr. Rogers fan, a Mr. Rogers Neighborhood fan as well too. And one of the things, David, that we always mention here on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast is that the importance of local libraries is that, a lot of libraries have children's book sections, big children's book sections. And there's times you might see your favorite book in there. And if you're seeing books that you've been seeing over the past now 9 months on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, and you don't see I Matter, or you don't see Captain Curriculum Safe Circle Time, or you don't see Squirrel Sweater, feel free to make a recommendation to the children's department of your local library and say, hey, when I saw I Matter and Captain Curriculum Safe Circle Time and Squirrel Sweater on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, I'd love to have you at least consider having this in your library, because all of these books that we've talked about on this month's edition of the Bookcast, David, they're great books. They're great reads for National Family Literacy Month, and they just serve so many different purposes in so many ways, and really, again, helps kids no matter wherever they're at on their path.
No, that's right. And another source of books for children, and I just found this out when I had our grandchildren were visiting, there's a Goodwill store and a Salvation Army store. They have these, what a collection of children's books they have. And that's another source. And if you have books that you'd like to trade in,
yes,
they take the donations too. So it's so important. Reading is so important, and that's why I love talking about all of these different children's books.
Mm-hmm.
Because reading now has to be introduced to the very young, I think.
I agree.
And as you were saying about your grandmother, it's the association, the positive association with the adult who may be reading to you, that I think forms that bond, the bond
mm-hmm.
between the adult and the love of reading. So, at any rate, the Squirrel Sweater was a charming book, and you mentioned that Laura also wrote the book about Fred Rogers, and the Squirrel Sweater has a sweetness and a kindness and a low keyness that Fred has too, and it's a sweet book. I liked it.
You can almost say that maybe like a a spiritual cousin of sorts to Daniel Tiger could be Squirrel, kind of that same,
yes,
same insecurities almost, but so lovable and cute and adorable. And so, yeah, you can tell. And also I did want to give credit to Jenny, because Jenny's illustrations, she does all the illustrations in the Woodlands Friends series. So one of the great things for children when they connect with a series of children's books and you have the same author and illustrator, it creates more familiarity, it creates more adventure. There's this synergy that's already in place. So Jenny and Laura have been together for 3 books, and this is just one of the many wonderful books. Again, David, I mean, Beaming Books. Again, who wouldn't want to have their book published by Beaming Books? Just a great name for a publishing company as well. And just as we always like to give credit to the local libraries across the country, some of the pillars of our society are also children's bookstores, independent bookstores as well too. I'm glad that you mentioned. I'm actually going to be dropping off some gently used children's books to my local Goodwill upon the conclusion of the recording of our episode number 9 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. And it's I'm just so grateful, David, because believe it or not, not only next month we're going to be fully in the holiday mode, but the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast is going to be hitting double digits. I can remember the time when I up from 9 to 10. So, we're going from the single digits all the way to the double digits of the Bookcast. So next month's Bookcast will be episode number 10, and there is so much more, many more magical adventures to come. More wonderful and magical trolley stops in the process. Again, raise your hand if you have had fun on episode number 9 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. There's so many hands with the little ones between myself and David, the little ones on screen as well. Now, as we had alluded to at the very beginning, David, you're really good. You're really good at keeping the suspense, so to speak, because we are celebrating David Newell here, not only for his kindness and his time in joining us every month on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, but David has, for his entire life, he has given to children, parents, and families in different aspects. Of course, on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, continuing to keep the legacy of Fred Rogers alive and well. And so I sent you out a birthday gift that you've actually had now for like a couple weeks, actually, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So this is the big birthday reveal, so to speak.
You actually want me to open it now?
Absolutely.
Well, here it is with your writing on it.
There we go.
And I've as you were saying that, I was slowly opening the top. I haven't seen what it is, but I now will.
Okay.
Little. Oh my goodness! I can't believe it.
It is Mike, the tough little tugboat, has come back into your life, David.
That's what I had. That is exactly what I had. And thank you. Mike, the tough little tugboat. It was my favorite book. This is the record version of it. Yep. Now it would be on a little CD or smaller. That is wonderful. I've got a hold of it here so the records don't fall out. But Mike, there are, let me see, how many records?
There's like 4.
Where did you ever find this?
I actually found it, I believe it was on eBay, Amazon. Amazon I found it on.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much. That really is I never thought I'd ever see it again.
Well, David,
now I can play this for my grandson.
Yes, you can. There's the part of me that at first I had to wonder, I'm like, does David Newell still have a record player? And I felt, I feel that you would. So that's actually, before there were audiobooks, there were books on tape, and before there were books on tape, there was books on vinyl records.
Well, this is what I had. All of my records were this, an album of 78, and at the end of the record, some of them you would follow along with the story inside. This doesn't have it, but when you were ready to turn the page, there would be a signal on the record. it go, now you turn the page and you read along with the record.
Yep.
But Mike doesn't have it. But this is I don't know. I never thought that I had this album. I had it. Thank you.
Oh, you are so welcome, David.
What a surprise. I never thought I'd ever see Mike again.
Well,
I think I told you earlier that when I would go to the library with my mother, we'd go once a week, and I'd invariably take out Mike, and I'd have to bring it back in a week, and then I'd wait a week and take it back out again. At that point, you could only keep it 7 days or something like that. You had to return it. But I do have a 78 record player too, so I'll play this. Well, Mike, the tough little tugboat.
This is how, David, for these past 9 months, you have reconnected back with your inner child and been experiencing, the world of children's books through the lens of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. And this is not only my gift to you, but this is the gift from all of our listeners and viewers and those who have seen you for many years on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And this is our way of saying thank you for everything that you have done for all of us. And yes, I'm like, there has to, Mike, the tough little tugboat has to be out there somewhere. And I just did a search, and poof, it popped up, and there was one copy. There was one copy on Amazon. It was obviously used. It wasn't brand new. And I said, I'm going to get this. And then, yes, there's also a card too. Don't forget about the card. You don't necessarily.
Well, the card is right here. And I wonder, that's not from Mike, but life can move so fast, but hopefully not today. Today, you should slow it all down and stop to reflect on how good life has been, so you can feel how much you're admired and loved. Well, thank you very much.
There you go.
That is a lovely card. And there's a there's a note in here that I've read. I'll have to read this, your note. Well, thank you so much. This is
you're
wonderful.
Welcome, David.
Mike, the tough little tugboat. Who would have thought? Who would have thought?
This is just a reminder how life comes full circle. And as we've said, there are many more magical trolley stops to come. David is now reconnected back with Mike, the tough little tugboat, after all of these years. So again, we want to give special thanks to all of the authors who allowed us to be able to share their books on episode number 9 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. Once again, Laquita Bolden's I Matter, the first installment in the My Little Scientist series, Curtis Andrews' Captain Curriculum's Safe Circle Time, and the newest installment in the Woodlands Friends series, Squirrel's Sweater by Laura Renauld, courtesy of our friends at Beaming Books. If this episode of the Bookcast, I'm feeling so much love and joy in my heart during National Family Literacy Month, and also the month of David Newell's birthday as well too. If this Bookcast, episode number 9, our 9th trolley stop, if this has inspired you, if it's brought more love and joy into your heart, if you're saying, man, I want to find my copy of Mike the Tough Little Tugboat right now as well too. If you haven't had the chance to do so, you can subscribe to Empowered Publicity's official YouTube channel and to share this very special trolley stop. That was episode number 9 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. Before we part, of course, we do want to give just a couple of tips of the cap as well. Before we actually start, that is that if you are a children's author and you would like to be able to have David and I share your new children's book on a forthcoming edition of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast in 2022, you can connect with us via our official website here at Empowered Publicity, empoweredpublicity.com, or connect with us via any of our social media platforms that you now see on screen. Facebook and Instagram at Empowered Publicity, and Twitter at Empowered_PR. That tip of the cap that we'd like to give to one of our favorite neighbors here in San Diego, Laura Kavanaugh, the host and executive producer of San Diego Living on the CW San Diego CBS 8, the official home of Empowering Reads for Kids. So if you are a children's author and would like to have Laura and I review your brand new children's book on a forthcoming edition of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, as we share the newest heartfelt children's books from the shining stars in the KidLit community with children, parents, families, educators, those who love great children's books here in America's finest city, San Diego, on the CW San Diego CBS 8. Again, you can head on over to our official website at empoweredpublicity.com, or visit us via any of our social media platforms on screen. And if you're interested in more information on Empowered Publicity and how we can be of service to you to help you share your inspiring story in the release of your brand new children's book in 2022, you can schedule your courtesy discovery call by heading on over to empoweredpublicity.com and let us see how we can be of service to you. So once again, one final time, Laquita Bolden's I Matter, the next installment in the My Little Scientist series, Curtis Andrews' Captain Curriculum Saves Circle Time, and Laura Reynolds' Squirrel's Sweater. The links to all three books are below in the description below as well. You can leave 5-star reviews on Amazon if you feel guided to do so. And one tip of the cap to, again, our friends and neighbors at Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh, which is the Pittsburgh chapter of the national non-for-profit children's literacy organization that provides children's books, literacy developmental resources, and tools for children from low-income families all across the country, specifically in Pittsburgh. Did you know that last year, again, the Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh gave over 80,000 children's books to over 23,000 children in need? So we at Empowered Publicity are proud to donate each and every month to Reading is Fundamental Pittsburgh. If you feel guided to do so, again, no donation is too large, no donation is too small. You can head on over to rifpittsburgh.org/donate. We also have that link in the description below as well. We want to thank all of you for spending some time with us here on the Bookcast. As we hear the trolley's now got some balloons. We see a lot of festive. I think that the trolley may even have a birthday cake for David, if I'm not mistaken, right? Because he's again celebrating his 40th birthday, is like David likes to say, for the 40th time. For the 40th time. David, any final words for our listeners and viewers as we head into the month of December? Thanksgiving first, and then the Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa season.
Yes, but the holidays are coming up, and I can think of no better gifts than giving of a book and giving of yourself to read that book to a child, whether it's a library, Goodwill, a bookstore, wherever you can get a book into a child's hands. That is really a present, I think. Absolutely. And maybe you can find Mike. You can find your copy of Mike the Tough Little Tugboat. If you look very closely, you can find your copy of that as well too. Of course, one of our favorite neighbors is Mr. Rogers. David spent many years with him on the air at WQED on PBS with Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Mr. Rogers reminded us that we're loved and we're special just the way that we are. There's no person in the world, I have this in the yonder distance on the other side of my office, there's no person in the world like you, and I like you just the way that you are. So Fred always had an affinity for the numbers 143. 1 letter in I, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. Here at the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast and Empowered Publicity, we like to say to all of you that we love you. There's 2 letters in we, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. As David is kind once again to join us this month, just a reminder that you are loved, that you are special, that you are whole, that you are healthy, that you are complete, that you matter. That's right. You matter just the way that you are. So David, this has been such a wonderful trolley stop, such a wonderful way to be able to celebrate your birthday. I'm glad to see that you've reconnected with Mike the Tough Little Tugboat. We want to thank all of you, our listeners and viewers, for your continued support of Empowered Publicity, leading into and during this holiday season, for your continued support over these past 9 months of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. Again, by subscribing to Empowered Publicity's official YouTube channel and sharing this bookcast specifically on social media, your favorite social media platforms of your choosing, you have the opportunities to spread the love of children's literacy just like we are here at the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. And let us know, provide us with your supportive feedback as well. Provide the supportive feedback for all of the authors that have been featured on the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast. We want to thank you for your support of local libraries, children's bookstores, Goodwill stores as well, that are doing their part to keep the love and the joy of reading alive for all of the children all across the country and all around the world. And above all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world. So for the birthday boy himself, David Newell, for myself, John Masiulionis, we hope that you have enjoyed episode number 9 of the Neighborly Reviews Bookcast, and we look forward to seeing you once again next month, as it very much will be fully the holiday season. Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa all wrapped up in one. We'll be celebrating the rest of the holiday season with all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars. But until then,
Thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world. Goodbye for now.
There goes Mike following the trolley. Bye-bye.